Commander Zixtar stood on the observation deck of the massive galactic combat station, his four arms crossed in amusement. Through the transparent aluminum viewing panel, he watched Earth rotate slowly beneath them. The blue and green planet looked so fragile, so primitive compared to the gleaming metropolises of the Zorathian Empire. "Pathetic," he muttered, his mandibles clicking with disdain. Around him, representatives from 12 different alien civilizations had gathered for the quarterly combat assessment meeting. It was here that they evaluated potential threats from newly discovered worlds. "The humans call their most dangerous animals apex predators," announced Creel Knox, the insectoid analyst, projecting holographic images into the center of the room. A lion appeared first, roaring silently in the blue light. "This is what they fear. A large cat that weighs merely 190 kilograms. Laughter rippled through the assembly. On Zorathia, even their household pets were twice that size and armed with venomous spines. "Show us more of these fearsome beasts," chuckled Ambassador Vexilon from the Crimson Nebula, her scaled skin shimmering with amusement. The hologram shifted. A grizzly bear materialized, standing on its hind legs. Then a crocodile, a great white shark. Each image drew more laughter and mockery from the assembled aliens. "Their apex predator of the ocean has remained unchanged for millions of years," Creel Knox continued. "They consider this a sign of perfection. We consider it a sign of evolutionary stagnation." Zixtar leaned forward, his 6 eyes focusing on the display. "What about their military capabilities? Primitive projectile weapons, chemical explosives. They've barely mastered nuclear fission," the analyst reported. "They still fight among themselves over resources and ideology." "Then they pose no threat," Zixtar declared. "But their planet, it has resources we need. Water, organic compounds, rare minerals. The humans have something called the Geneva Convention," added Yorthak, the military strategist. "They actually limit themselves in warfare. They consider certain weapons too cruel to use." This caused an eruption of laughter so intense that several aliens had to steady themselves against the walls. "Too cruel?" Vexilon gasped between fits of amusement. "They handicap themselves in battle because of morality?" Down on Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Pentagon, General Sarah Mitchell watched the alien gathering through intercepted surveillance feeds. The Joint Task Force of Earth's United Nations had been monitoring the aliens for months, ever since their ship had entered the solar system. "They're laughing at us," muttered Colonel Chen, his jaw tight with anger. "Let them laugh," General Mitchell replied calmly. She turned to Dr. James Okonkwo, head of the Xenobiology Defense Division. "How's Project Unleash coming along?" Dr. Okonkwo smiled grimly. "We've completed the selection process. The aliens want to see Earth's predators. We'll show them predators." "But not the ones they're expecting," Mitchell added. Back on the alien station, Zixtar was outlining his plan for Earth's conquest. "We'll demand their surrender. When they refuse, and their pride will ensure they refuse, we'll demonstrate our superiority. A single squadron of our fighters could disable their entire satellite network." "What if they resist?" asked a cautious voice from the back. It was Thumoth, a relatively new addition to the Council from a recently conquered world. "With what?" Zixtar scoffed. "Their lions? Their bears? Their primitive weapons that they're too moral to use effectively?" "I've studied their history," Thumoth persisted. "They can be unpredictable when cornered." "Every species fights when cornered," Vexilon dismissed. "It changes nothing. We've conquered 100 worlds. Earth will be the 101st. The Council voted unanimously to proceed with the conquest plan. They would give Earth 7 rotations to surrender. It was more than generous. They agreed. Most worlds got 3. As the message of demands was transmitted to Earth, Zixtar retired to his quarters, confident in victory. He pulled up more files on Earth's creatures, amusing himself with their primitive nature. elephants that could be felled by a single plasma bolt, wolves that hunted in packs but fled from fire, eagles that soared high but were vulnerable to any atmospheric disruption. Then he came across an entry that made him pause. It was filed under Earth's most fearless creature in the human database. The image showed a small, stocky animal with silver-gray fur and white stripes. It looked almost comical compared to the bears and lions. Mellivora capensis, he read aloud. Common name, honey badger. Average weight, 12 kilograms. He laughed again. The humans considered something that weighed less than his breakfast to be fearless. He moved on to other files, not bothering to read the rest of the entry. If he had, he might have noticed the warnings, the notes about its intelligence, its problem-solving abilities, its immunity to venom, its tendency to attack animals 100 times its size, its refusal to surrender even when mortally wounded. Most importantly, he missed the footnote added by a human zoologist. If aliens ever invade Earth, for the love of God, don't let them anywhere near these things. In the bunker, General Mitchell received the alien demands. 7 days to surrender or face the consequences. She looked at the countdown timer on the wall, then at the cage in the corner of the room where a pair of eyes gleamed with primal intelligence. 7 days, she said softly. More than enough time to prepare a proper welcome. The honey badger in the cage yawned, showing teeth designed by evolution to crush bones. It had no idea it was about to become Earth's first line of defense. It only knew that it was irritated by the cage, and when honey badgers got irritated, things had a tendency to go very, very wrong for everyone involved. The first Zorathian ground units landed on Earth exactly 7 days later, just after humanity's refusal to surrender was broadcast across all frequencies. Commander Zixtar watched from his command ship as dozens of drop pods streaked through Earth's atmosphere, each containing a squad of the Empire's finest warriors. Target the military installations first, he ordered. Show them the futility of resistance. Squad leader Braxitor was the first to step onto Earth's soil. His power armor, standing 3 meters tall and bristling with weapons, made him feel invincible. The landing zone was a clearing in what the humans called Montana, strategically chosen for its proximity to several military bases. No resistance detected, Braxtor reported. The humans have fled. Cowards, someone muttered over the comms. The squad advanced through the forest, their sensors scanning for any sign of human military presence. What they found instead was nothing. No tanks, no soldiers, no defensive positions, just trees, grass, and the occasional bird flying overhead. "Sir," called out Private Nexville, "I'm detecting small life signs, multiple contacts, approaching from the north." Braxtor checked his scanner. The signatures were tiny, barely registering. "Local wildlife. Ignore them and continue to the objective." That was their first mistake. The honey badgers had been released days earlier as part of Project Unleash, but these weren't ordinary honey badgers. Dr. Okonkwo's team had done something that would have horrified any ethics committee before the invasion. They had enhanced the badgers' natural abilities. Not with cybernetics or genetic manipulation, which the aliens might detect, but with something far simpler and more terrifying. They had made them angrier. Using a combination of territorial hormones, mild irritants, and strategic food deprivation, followed by the placement of alien-scented food caches, they had created the perfect storm of honey badger fury. Then they had released hundreds of them in strategic locations. Private Nexville was the first to see one. The creature emerged from the underbrush, barely visible against the forest floor. It looked up at the towering alien warrior with what could only be described as contempt. "Sir, one of the creatures is—" The honey badger moved. Despite weighing only 15 kilograms against the alien's power armor that weighed half a ton, it charged. Nexville almost laughed as he raised his plasma rifle. "Stand down, Private," Braxator ordered. "Don't waste ammunition on local fauna." The honey badger reached Nexville's leg and immediately began climbing. Its claws, evolved to dig through hard earth and tear apart termite mounds, found purchase in the joints of the power armor. Nexville tried to shake it off, but the badger held on with legendary determination. "Get it off!" Nexville shouted, more annoyed than concerned. Then the honey badger found what it was looking for, a vulnerable spot where the leg armor connected to the torso section. It began to chew and claw and tear. "Its teeth can't possibly penetrate our—" Braxtor's words were cut short as warning lights flashed across Nexville's display. Hydraulic fluid began leaking from the joint. "Impossible!" Nexville fired his plasma rifle, but the honey badger had already moved, scurrying around to his back with incredible agility. The plasma bolt hit empty ground. More honey badgers emerged from the forest. Dozens of them, then hundreds. They moved with purpose, spreading out to surround the squad. "Open fire!" Braxtor commanded. Plasma bolts lit up the forest. Trees exploded. The ground was scorched, but the honey badgers were already moving, using their natural agility and small size to avoid the attacks. They darted between legs, climbed trees, and disappeared into burrows only to emerge behind the aliens. Private Yexmar screamed as 3 honey badgers reached his helmet. They couldn't penetrate it, but they could do something worse. They found the air intake valves. Within seconds, they had clogged them with dirt, leaves, and their own fur. "Can't breathe!" Yexmar gasped, clawing at his helmet. "Remove your helmet!" Braxtor ordered. "In hostile atmosphere? Are you insane?" But the choice was made for him as his suit's emergency protocols kicked in, ejecting the helmet before he suffocated. Yexmar took a deep breath of earth air and immediately found himself face to face with a very angry honey badger. The scream that followed was picked up by every communication device in a 50-mile radius. Back on the command ship, Zixtar watched in disbelief as his elite squad's vital signs began flashing red one by one. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. "Unknown, sir. They're under attack, but we're not detecting any human military signatures." "Put it on the main screen." The chaos that appeared on the view screen defied explanation. Elite Zorathian warriors, each capable of single-handedly conquering small settlements, were running in circles, firing wildly at small, fast-moving creatures that seemed to be everywhere at once. One warrior had removed his armor entirely and was trying to fight off 2 honey badgers with his bare hands, a battle he was losing despite having 4 arms and being 20 times their size. Another was rolling on the ground, trying to dislodge a honey badger that had somehow gotten inside his armor and was wreaking havoc on the internal systems. "What are those things?" Vexilon asked, her voice a mixture of horror and fascination. Creel Knox frantically pulled up the Earth database. "Mellivora capensis, the honey badger. But sir, this doesn't make sense. They're too small, too primitive. How are they—" His words were cut short as Braxtor's final transmission came through. The squad leader, the veteran of a dozen successful invasions, was backing against a tree, his armor sparking and smoking from 100 small breaches. 3 honey badgers were advancing on him, and dozens more were emerging from the forest. "Command!" he gasped. "Abort the ground invasion. These things, they don't stop. They don't fear. They don't follow the rules." The transmission cut off. In the Pentagon bunker, General Mitchell allowed herself a small smile as she watched the satellite feed. The first test had exceeded all expectations. "Phase 1 complete," she announced. "The Badgers have proven effective against ground forces." "What's Phase 2?" Colonel Chen asked. Dr. Okonkwo stepped forward. "The aliens still have their ships, their technology. We've shown them that Earth's creatures don't play by their rules. Now we show them what happens when human intelligence combines with honey badger attitude." He gestured to a series of modified spacecraft on another screen. We call them Badger pods, small, fast, heavily armored, and piloted by volunteers who have undergone what we call tactical aggression training, which is, we taught them to think like honey badgers, never retreat, never surrender, attack anything larger than yourself, and most importantly, go for the weak spots. General Mitchell turned to the communication officer. Send a message to the alien commander. Tell him that was just our wildlife. Wait until he meets the humans who learned from them. On the Zorathian command ship, Zixtar stared at the empty clearing where his squad had been. All that remained were damaged pieces of power armor and the occasional honey badger, sitting atop the wreckage like tiny furry kings. "Sir," the communication officer said nervously, "we're receiving a transmission from Earth." "Put it through." General Mitchell's face appeared on the screen. She was smiling, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that honey badgers would have if they could smile. "Commander Zixtar," she said calmly, "you laughed at our predators. You mocked our morality. You dismissed our capacity for warfare, but you made one crucial mistake." "What mistake?" Zixtar asked, trying to maintain his composure. "You assumed we were the prey." Commander Zixtar stared at the tactical display in growing horror. In the hours since the failed ground assault, Earth's response had been unlike anything in the Zorathian military databases. Small craft, no larger than escape pods, were launching from hidden sites across the planet. They moved erratically, unpredictably, like angry insects disturbed from their nest. "They're sending their fighters," reported Tactical Officer Creel Knox. "Should we deploy the fleet?" "Of course. Destroy them before they reach us." The Zorathian fleet, comprising 50 state-of-the-art warships, moved into defensive formation. Their weapons systems, capable of targeting and destroying objects moving at significant fractions of light speed, locked onto the approaching Earth craft. "Sir," Creel Knox's voice wavered, "their attack pattern, it doesn't make sense." The Badger pods weren't flying in formation. They weren't using any recognized military tactics. Instead, each pilot was flying like a honey badger moved, chaotic, aggressive, and completely unpredictable. They spiraled, dove, climbed, and changed direction seemingly at random. "Fire at will," Zixtar commanded. Thousands of plasma bolts and laser beams lit up space. The Zorathian targeting computers, designed to predict movement patterns based on millennia of space combat data, struggled to lock onto the erratic Earth craft. Some Badger pods were hit and destroyed, but the pilots didn't retreat. The survivors pressed forward with even more determination. Lieutenant Maria Rodriguez gripped her controls inside Badger Pod 7. The G-forces from her chaotic maneuvers should have been crushing her, but the special training had prepared her for this. She thought like a honey badger. Her spacecraft was small, the alien ship ahead was big, and that meant only one thing: attack. "Remember," General Mitchell's voice crackled through the comm, "honey badgers go for the weak spots. Every ship has them." Maria spotted her target, a maintenance port on the Zorathian cruiser ahead. It was protected by armor plating, but honey badgers didn't care about armor. They found ways around it, through it, under it. She drove her pod straight at the port, spinning to avoid defensive fire. At the last second, instead of pulling away like any sane pilot would, she accelerated. The Badger pod slammed into the maintenance port with the force of a guided missile. But unlike a missile, the pod didn't explode on impact. It was designed to burrow. Using mining equipment modified with honey badger-inspired engineering, the pod began cutting through the hull. Inside the cruiser, alarms blared. "Hull breach in Section 7. Seal it off," the ship's captain ordered. But Maria wasn't done. As her pod cut through into the ship's interior, she activated Phase 2. The pod opened, releasing its special cargo, a dozen actual honey badgers, each wearing a specially designed spacesuit that kept them alive and even angrier than usual. The chaos that followed was indescribable. The honey badgers, finding themselves in an alien environment full of things to attack, did what honey badgers do. They went for cables, they chewed through power conduits, they attacked any alien they encountered with a fury that defied their small size. "Internal security to Section 7, the captain shouted. But the security teams found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand. The badgers were too small for their weapons to target effectively in the confined corridors. They moved too fast, thought too differently, and absolutely refused to die even when hit. Across the Zorathian fleet, similar scenes played out. Some badger pods missed their targets, but their pilots simply turned around and tried again, and again, and again. Like honey badgers facing a cobra, they didn't know the meaning of giving up. On the command ship's bridge, Ambassador Vexlon watched her proud cruiser listing to one side, its lights flickering as honey badgers destroyed system after system from within. "This is impossible," she muttered. "They're just animals. Primitive Earth animals." "No," said Thumoth, the cautious voice from before. "That's what we failed to understand. They're not just animals. They're Earth animals. Evolution on Earth doesn't create the biggest or the strongest. It creates survivors. It creates things that refuse to quit." Zixtar turned on him. "How do you know this?" "Because my world made the same mistake 70 cycles ago. We laughed at Earth's creatures, too. Then they introduced us to something called army ants. We barely survived, and only by agreeing to leave Earth alone. Why didn't you warn us?" "I tried. You laughed." A new alert sounded. The main view screen showed something that made every alien on the bridge step back in fear. Hundreds more Badger pods were launching from Earth. But worse, larger ships were following them. Human warships, crewed by galactic standards, but modified with the same honey badger philosophy. Thick armor, redundant systems, and designed to keep fighting even when severely damaged. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "Incoming message from Earth Command." General Mitchell appeared on screen again. Behind her stood dozens of humans, each wearing a uniform with a honey badger emblem. "Commander Zixtar," she began, "I want to introduce you to Earth's new military doctrine. We call it the Honey Badger Protocol. It's simple. We don't stop. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We attack things larger than us, because size means nothing when you have the right attitude." "This is madness," Zixtar shouted. "You're destroying your own ships and pilots." "Honey badgers have a 70% mortality rate in nature." Dr. Okonkwo stepped into view. "They don't care. They keep fighting. And humans? We learned from them. We realized that sometimes the most dangerous predator isn't the biggest or the strongest. It's the one too stubborn to know when it's beaten." The tactical display showed more bad news. 3 Zorathian cruisers were now drifting powerless, honey badgers having destroyed their internal systems. 2 more were venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. The pride of the Zorathian fleet was being brought down by creatures that weighed less than their food dispensers. "We can destroy your planet," Zixtar threatened desperately. "You could try," Mitchell agreed. "But here's something else about honey badgers. They're very good at survival. Even if you glasses our surface, we'll survive in bunkers, and we'll remember. And one day, when you least expect it, honey badger pods will show up in your home system. Because honey badgers hold grudges." She leaned forward. "Or you could leave, now. Never come back. Tell every species in the galaxy that Earth is protected by honey badgers and the humans who learned from them." Zixtar looked around his bridge. His officers were all watching him, waiting for orders. But he could see the fear in their eyes. They had come to conquer a world of primitive predators and moral weakness. Instead, they had found something far more terrifying. A species that had looked at the universe and decided to model their defense after an animal too angry to die. "All ships," he said quietly, "prepare for emergency jump. We're leaving." "Sir?" Creel Knox asked in surprise. "We're leaving," Zixtar repeated more firmly. And we're marking this system as quarantined. Extreme danger. Do not approach. As the Zorathian fleet prepared to flee, one final message came through from Earth. It was Dr. Okonkwo. Commander, you asked what makes honey badgers special. It's not their size or strength. It's that they've weaponized audacity. They've turned fearlessness into a survival strategy. And humans? We've spent our entire evolution learning from nature. You laughed at our predators, but you never asked the important question. What question? Zixtar asked, despite himself. If those are our predators, what kind of species survived long enough to put them in zoos? The Zorathian fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind several damaged ships and a profound lesson about judging books by their covers, or in this case, judging predators by their size. On Earth, General Mitchell watched the alien fleet disappear from her screens. Around the world, celebrations began. Humanity had faced its first interstellar threat and won, not through superior technology or firepower, but by embracing the philosophy of Earth's most fearless creature. In his enclosure at the military facility, the original honey badger that had inspired the defense strategy was busy destroying its food bowl, completely unaware it had just saved the world. When a handler tried to give it a medal, it attempted to eat it, then got bored and went to take a nap. Because honey badgers don't care about glory or recognition. They only care about winning, and they always win, one way or another. The footage of the battles spread throughout the galaxy faster than light. Species that had considered Earth for conquest quietly removed it from their target lists. The story grew with each telling. The planet where the wildlife attacked warships, where the dominant species had learned from something called a honey badger, where conventional military wisdom went to die. Earth's application to join the Galactic Council was approved in record time. No one wanted to vote against the honey badger planet. Their representative, Dr. Okonkwo, attended the first meeting wearing a small honey badger pin. Several ambassadors moved their seats further away. And somewhere in the Pentagon's deepest bunker, military strategists were already working on the next phase of Earth's defense. Project Mongoose was just beginning, and if the galaxy thought honey badgers were bad, they had no idea what was coming next. But that's a story for another time. For now, Earth was safe, protected by the universal truth that had saved it. Never, ever underestimate the honey badger.